Welcome to this very special occasion. This is a very special occasion because it gives us an opportunity to really honor our alumni writers, and so for me it's very special. My name is Elena Maria Viramontes, and I'm the co-director, interim co-director, along with Roger Gilbert. And at this time, I would like for you to please silence your phones. Cornell University is located on the traditional homelands of the Gayokono. The Gayokono are members of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, an alliance of 6 sovereign nations with a historic and contemporary presence on this land. The Confederacy precedes the establishment of Cornell University, New York State, in the United States of America. We acknowledge the painful history of the Gayokono dispossession and honor the ongoing connection of the Gayokono people, past and present, to these lands and waters. A few things. Books are available for purchase from the Buffalo Street Book. Here they are. We invite you to come to the reception and book signing in the English Lounge, the second floor, room 258. Okay, so what is the Freund Prize about? Philip Freund, class of 1929, bless his soul, was a novelist, a short story writer, poet, documentary film writer, playwright, television dramatist, essayist, and literary critic, who not only loved Cornell University, but was also very interested in nurturing creative writers. Some of you may be aware that the graduates of our MFA program are eligible to teach here at Cornell as lecturers in English for the 2 years following their graduation. These lectureships are paid for in part by the generosity of Philip Freund, whose will provided our program with an endowment intended to benefit creative writing graduate students. Since 2011, the Philip Freund Creative Writing Fund has enabled us to offer the second year of those lectureships to all MFA students. However, Philip Freund's generosity did not end here. Though through his endowment, we have created the Philip Freund Prize for Creative Writing, which honors graduates upon their successful publication of a novel, poetry, or short story collection. I'm excited to announce, too, that the Philip Freund Prize for Creative Writing is an award intended to honor our graduates with a $5,000 stipend. We are also able to invite our published writers to share their work, and we hope this celebration reflects how proud we are of our distinguished alumni. Now I'd like to introduce Roger Gilbert, who is the interim co-director of the Creative Writing Program, up to the podium.
Thank you, Elena. It's my honor to begin by introducing Lanre Akinsiku, who received his MFA here in 2016, I think. He's the author of 4 novels in a young adult series about basketball set in Oakland, California, called Blacktop. Each novel has a different character's name as the title. And the series has won recognition from the New York Public Library, Publishers Weekly, the Junior Library Guild. His fiction and essays have appeared in the Washington Post, the Kenyon Review, on NPR, and elsewhere. And he's taught creative writing at Cornell, of course, at Rowan University, at Penn, at Brown, and he regularly teaches creative writing workshops for kids and adults around the country. Just a little over a year ago, Lanre was here in this room where he gave a really beautiful tribute to our beloved late colleague, Michael Cook. And it's really wonderful to have him back now as a Freund recipient. So please welcome Lanre Akinsiku.
Hey, y'all. Thank you. Thank you. Yes. Thank you for that wonderful intro, Roger, and to the department for this honor. I'm excited to be reading with Alexi and Yvette and Jennifer. I was actually telling a friend last night about how during my first October here in grad school, it snowed, and I just knew that I was not going to be here very long. Like, so to come back and like really feel at home is a reflection of all the support and attention and care that I've gotten from the faculty and staff here, and so I'll be endlessly grateful for that. I just finished a book. It's the first thing that I've started and finished since I've left. I'm glad that this is going to be the first place that I share it with anybody outside of my editor and my partner. God bless them. A lot of the book takes place in a therapist's office, and the narrator is trying to understand the kind of shape and texture and size of his loneliness. And so I'm just going to read a couple really short sections from it. Sorry, just looking at the time. Okay. So in this first section, the narrator is describing the sudden onset of loneliness in high school. It just kind of comes out of the blue for him. Winter break starts. You're walking so you won't think because outside it's too cold to think about much. In the house, you keep getting lost in mind mazes of your own making, thinking about thinking, faulty premises, blind spots, poor priors, biases, red herrings, straw men, tautologies, delusions, epistemological roundabouts. No one can truly know anything, especially not themselves, or something like that. Down Ben Franklin, past the big mounds of dirty snow, Baltimore, Chestnut, Walnut. Wipers poking out at right angles from the windshields. Snow making painful sounds under your boots. Luminescent pigeons on the power lines, yellow 5 sun. The city big and bright and quiet and not as cold as you'd hoped. It's not that you want to leave the world. The world as a whole, the world as an idea is fine. The world is just people trying to live their lives and make the best of things. It's really just about being tired. I would prefer not to. No one in Mr. Yusuf's class understood that Bartleby's problem wasn't about the leisure class or exploitation or the politics of refusal or whatever. It was existential. It felt like you could see his life. Bartleby lying on the steps outside his office, his arm making a wide sweeping gesture towards all of it. The tenements and trolleys, the paper boys, the ambition and cigar smoke, bacon for breakfast, and those god-awful Franklin Pierce for President leaflets everywhere, always blowing in your mouth. I would prefer not to. Your essay got you a B+, but it was the best thing you ever wrote. The last line said, "We are all Bartleby, even the happy ones among us." For extra credit, you did this whole analysis of high school itself and how the performance of pupil, of earnestness and curiosity, of grit and camaraderie and determination was just a veneer for the soul-killing tediousness of grades and test scores and acceptance letters. Capitalism, needing some way to conceal its murderous intentions, producing its own noble justifications. Mr. Yusuf had written one word in all caps across the top of the page. Cynical? But actually, it was the opposite of cynical. It was about celebrating life, saying yes to life, rejecting the parts of life everyone told you mattered, and finding for yourself the things that actually did, and trying as hard as you could to make yourself believe that was even possible. Okay, so later on in the book, he tries to cure his loneliness by becoming president of his high school. And he thinks this will somehow connect him to other people, but it does the exact opposite, right? It pushes him further away. And so this next scene is a kind of realization of what's happening to him. It was like that all the time, just saying whatever I could to get people to like me. I wanted to stop, believe me, but I couldn't. That's one of my biggest issues, one of the ways my fraudulence ran deeper than I understood at the time. For example, this whole time I've talked to you, I haven't even mentioned my friends. I did actually have friends, people I genuinely liked. But even with them, I felt so totally worthless and empty and fake since I was positive they could see through my diligence or intelligence or humor or whatever. And probably behind my back, they were talking about me and maybe making slick faces or quiet comments about how horrible I was. And in fact, I'd try to turn my head very quickly or drop my pencil and lean over so I could overhear them say the terrible things I was sure they were saying, which of course never worked. Since they were extremely sweet and kind, it wouldn't do anything to humiliate me, and were not, as I assumed, playing the long game, and being nice only to draw me in close enough for a betrayal that would cut that much deeper. But that's how it felt. And the kind of ironic thing about it was that the beauty and sincerity and genuine kindness of each of them was this white-hot spotlight on how terrible and hollow and fake I was, and how hard it was to be myself with a single person. Like there was this mask I put on, and at some point, and could now never take off. And so the nicer and kinder and more enthusiastic everyone was, the more study group invitations and complicated handshakes and nicknames they gave me, the more aware I was of that mask, and the worse I felt. And the worse I felt, the more I forgot to do little things for them, like send birthday texts or respond to the group threads. I mean, these were just the basics of being a friend, and I couldn't do them, which meant that on top of my self-loathing was a sort of additional disgusting film of self-absorption I couldn't even bear to think about. And even then, they still, for some reason, wanted to be friends and would invite me to movie nights or to that all-you-can-eat Korean place. I'm digressing a bit, but the point is I was just so incredibly alone and so horrified about being alone that I couldn't bring myself to say yes. So the last section, it gets lighter. The last section is this reoccurring memory of this birthday party he has when he's a little kid. And this particular memory kind of reoccurs throughout the book. And it kind of torments him and surprises him, and he spends a lot of the story trying to understand its significance. Thank you all for being here, for listening. Yeah. A Sunday in August with nothing going on, and so everyone's at our house. A big white banner with my name in gold, balloons tied to anything nailed down. I'm sure you're aware that no one in the world throws a better party than a Nigerian. The music can be heard from a mile away, bass, funk, body music, my mother dancing on her way down the stairs to greet everyone, and when the door opens, a hot blast of the aunties' laughter. A million of them squeeze into a kitchen that's basically a closet. And my mother tightening her wrap, rolling up her sleeves, blowing on pieces of hot, sweet, oily plantain before shoving them into my mouth. And the oldest auntie sitting on an overturned bucket cutting yams, and whispering something I cannot understand, and the kitchen boiling with laughter all over again. In the living room, my father and the uncles sit around sipping dark beer, loosening the top 2 buttons on their dress shirts, arguing, or at least I think they're arguing. In our language, the singing sounds the same as the arguing, which sounds the same as the joking, as if all of those things are in fact the same thing. Kids everywhere, climbing over everything, shining faces because our mothers love us enough to rub them with Vaseline before we leave. Everyone is a cousin. Little cousins in the backyard standing on a weight bench, front yard, girl cousins pointing at something on their phones and laughing, boy cousins kicking around a soccer ball and laughing when it clanks off something hard. The sun on an impossible arc, just never coming down, everything cast in fancy light. And then back inside, the men again, now drunk, their eyes glassy and their mouths gaping, the smell of beer, musk, stew, sweat, my mother and father kicking off their shoes so they can dance to the old music, wailing men and wailing drums, and I swear to God, H.G. Wells knows nothing about this kind of time travel, because these people are back home before America, before the disappointments and the overtime and the blood pressure medication, before the sacrifices, before me and before, I don't know. I don't actually know what I'm talking about. They just looked different, like more at home, like maybe home is just wherever you like to dance. Thanks.
Thank you, Lanre. That was great. Jennifer Gilmore received her MFA from Cornell in 1998, I think. Sorry? Well, I read somewhere that was 97, but then I don't know. It doesn't matter. You're here. It really doesn't matter. I'm just dutifully giving these dates. She's the author of 5 novels. Her first novel, Golden Country, was a finalist for the Los Angeles Times Book Prize and the National Jewish Book Award. Her second novel, Something Red, was a finalist for Salon's Good Sex Award, among others. Her third novel, The Mothers, is, I believe, currently being made into a film, right? Is that right? Yeah. Okay. She's also written 2 novels for young adults, We Were Never Here and If Only. Last spring, a story of hers appeared in Harper's Magazine, which I think is a pretty big deal. And, after all, they only publish 12 issues a year, so that's like 25% is less fiction than the New Yorker publishes. Jennifer's taught at Barnard, at Cornell, Harvard, NYU, the New School, Princeton, Sarah Lawrence, and she's currently teaching in the English department at Lafayette College. So please welcome Jennifer Gilmore.
Thank you, Roger, for that lovely introduction, and thank you, Helena. Thank you, everyone, for having me here. It's really lovely to be back. It's really nice to read with fellow alums and to have met with the students today. Yeah, it's really kind of moving because it's been a minute. It has been a minute. So I was really struggling to figure out what to read today. And like Lanre, I'm reading something that not a lot of people have read, so we'll see how that goes. So when I was trying to think of what I wanted to write for my next book, I wrote two YA books, and I'm back in the adult world, which sounds sort of naughty, but it's not. So for some of the older folks in the room, my great uncle was the scholar Harry Levin. And I thought, I've been trying to write a book about him for a really long time. So Harry Levin was a very famous Elizabethan scholar and also a modernist scholar. He was very famous for bringing James Joyce to this country and writing extensively about him. So when I was teaching at Harvard, where his letters are, I was starting to read all about him, and I thought this is going to be a book about the cost of assimilation. He was the first Jew to be tenured in the humanities at Harvard. And it was also going to be about who gets to be an artist and why. Who gets to consume art, who gets to make art, who gets that privilege. But it was really boring. And the letters were amazing. I learned that he was like friends with Nabokov, which is relevant to Ithaca. We all know he spent a good deal of time here. But a lot of my novels are researched, and so I decided there was nothing personal in these letters. So I thought I would do some research of my own, and I found this little tidbit that was like, Harry Levin's daughter, and this probably isn't even true, was one of the models for Lolita. So I was like, okay, now I have a novel. What I did was Harry Levin is very fictionalized, but I made up completely his daughter, who is trying to escape live up to and live down the expectations of being from that family. And she's queer, and she's an artist, a performance artist in New York City. So when choosing, all the novelists in the room know, choosing from what to read from a novel is really hard because it contains so many universes. So I just decided I'd read the beginning, which is also sort of relevant to Ithaca since it's got Nabokov in it. All right, so it's called The Greats. If you can think of a better title, let me know. Anyway. This is Amelia in 1977. Amelia adored her studio, though like her previous spaces, it was only temporary. She'd had in her decade in New York City more studios than years, but this one had a bathroom in the hallway and a slop sink. The ceilings were high and the tall windows let in beautiful light, particularly in the golden hour of early evening. An artist with a studio down the hall who managed the building for rent had explained it was too much light for painters, a whole working wall lost to the city. But Amelia knew that it had to have been the heat. There was no air conditioning. When she moved in August, it was unbearable. She brought milk jugs she filled with tap water to guzzle and douse herself in, but now, in late September, it was perfection. A furrier shared the space, a Russian Jew from Odessa, though he only came late at night, and while the artist had not mentioned it, Amelia knew the caked blood and clumps of rotted fur in the sweltering heat must have also been an obstacle for the previous tenant. But Amelia didn't mind. There was something comforting about the skinned furs lolling over large tables, their animal noses and paws still attached inviting Amelia to step into the pelt, live as a beaver or a raccoon or a fox. There were certain objects and pieces she carried from studio to studio, hanging them or standing them on a shelf as she would her work. Here she had her chicken photographs from prep school, dark images of carcasses that she laid out under her bed in a cave of darkness. She liked to remember getting onto her stomach, her chin on the old wooden planks as she set up the photographs. Propped on the shelf was also the first photograph she had developed on her own. A photo of her roommate on her way out to a mixer, her face a blur, but for her red lips, her arm in the foreground. And the first of the nurse photographs with her sketching overlay. Amelia also kept figurines her mother brought from Italy and a Japanese Daruma doll, a round bearded figure with one eye filled in. Her mother had instructed her to do so and make a wish. And when that wish comes true, she said, you fill in the other eye. There was an eye still waiting, and so the red and gold doll seemed to wink at her when she passed it on its shelf by the door. Outside her studio in the top right quadrant, Amelia had attached a mezuzah she'd bought at a shop on the Lower East Side, a reminder that though she might not have a covenant with God in the literal sense, that the studio was meant to be a place of faith. She had pinned one of Nabokov's blue butterflies to the wall by the door. The butterfly that traveled time, Volodya told her. She grew up calling him by his Russian name. The shortest lifespan of any species, he'd said. He left a carton of them in their basement in Cambridge when he and Vera left for Ithaca. She looked at the butterfly now, the 4 bright blue wings outlined in black and fringed with gray. Its otherworldly antenna fastened to the white wall. Last week, when Amelia saw the headline, Vladimir Nabokov, author of Lolita and Ada, is dead, neither one of her parents had called to let her know. What she remembered first was not the butterflies, but one day they were all in the garden at Kirkland Place in Cambridge. Amelia was 5, Leonard and Anya, Amelia's parents, and Vera and Vladimir were about to have lunch. The war was over now, and though everything was changed, the backyard was no longer affected by its rations and ruinations. The victory garden and the weeds and bugs that accompanied it had been dug up, returning the yard to a space for entertaining. It was autumn in New England, leaves turning, the sound of the stadium announcer reverberating through the neighborhood. The fenced-in yard somehow contained Amelia and their golden retriever Yorick within it, and a wooden arbor climbed with vines, to which Anya had begun to add gourds, where the previous season had brought tea roses. A swing had been installed, and occasionally someone would force Amelia upon it, and they would all turn from their meal to watch her socked feet and bare legs pumping up, and then that equal and opposite backward lean, the hair streaming in space, a romantic painting come to life. She watched them watching her. She was far away and silent, a kind of centerpiece or chandelier. Indeed, a thick French painting, unnecessary, providing atmosphere, as do flowers. Anya had prepared lunch, and Vera helped her in the kitchen. The first course had been beet borscht. There was always borscht with the Russians. And Vera helped prepare a souffle for the main course as her father and Vladimir relaxed at the table, the fragrance of dill still lingering. There was always also dill with the Russians. And it was as if one were tasting the inside of a stem, the delicate wisp of freshness suggesting in its scent its willowy nature. Leonard and Volodya were at the table discussing the novel. But the discussion was impossible that day. How can I talk about the novel when I don't know what a novel is, Volodya said. Come on now, that's disingenuous. You know what a novel is, the way you know what life is. Yeah, nerd, there are no novels. Sure, Leonard said, fine. It was a Nabokovian riddle. No novel is just the imposition of reality upon life, the transposition of reality into life. Literature was cut off from life itself by its innate literariness, and so could not quite attain reality. Leonard answered the riddle. There are only novels, he said. Also no writers, only individual books. Leonard considered an equally playful response when Volodya turned the conversation. Did you lose anyone, Leonard? Amelia leaned back and let velocity take her, and now the swing swayed to a stop. She got off and watched her father straighten his tie. He cleared his throat. His father's sister and her family in Berlin were gone. I can't say that I know for certain. And Vera? Unquestionably. And I've just found out that my dear brother Sergei died in Auschwitz. Had he resisted the Nazi state? Had he hidden friends? Leonard wondered, but it was not discourse for a weekend lunch. There was a rupture in the world, and that rupture had been repaired, and no one need discuss it. Amelia had seen a magazine featuring the Nuremberg trials that was left open on the kitchen table. There had been photos of human bones, walking skeletons with hollowed cheeks and hips, children's dirty, haunted faces. Before bed each night, the figures rose in her imagination, reaching their arms out to her. Nothing she did would shut them out. There was no equal and opposite thought or image to counter the horrifying photographs. She went from the swing to the table, set for lunch. A flowered tablecloth draped over the edges, white bowls and plates, bone china from England, water glasses thin as reflections, linen napkins embroidered with the letter R, bunched and wrinkled on folding chairs, Vera's handbag perched on the corner. What was in a woman's pocketbook, hard as a suitcase? What was jiggling in men's pockets? Amelia touched the metal clasp. She flipped it open. Vladimir, at the other end of the table, shook his head as if to shake away his memories. Leonard observed Amelia approaching, but he wasn't watching her. He was never really there, not really. "Daddy," she said, laughing. She wore a wrinkled pink pinafore, and the bib of the shirt beneath was ruffled. Then she pointed the pistol at him. Leonard stared down at her as if she were as foreign as the war had been. He looked into the barrel of the gun. He did not move to stand, but was rigid, as if paralyzed. "Mia," said Vladimir, slowly rising, "come to me." He was large and smiling and open. Amelia stood unwavering. Around her was a yard and a wooden fence and a wrought iron bench and an open handbag spilled in the grass. In the negative space around that handbag was the grass, browning with the first frost, and a lipstick and a paper notebook and a leather change purse and a ring of keys. "Amelia," Leonard said sharply. Amelia placed her hands at her sides, the gun pointed toward the cold ground. She went to Vladimir, her back arched as she made her way into his open arms. "For me?" He unhooked her tiny hand from the magazine and the trigger guard. He peeled away her fingers. As Vladimir transferred the pistol into his own hand, it transformed from a weapon to a toy. It was the size of a toy now. A toy in Vladimir Nabokov's pudgy, clean hand. He set it down and set Amelia free. Leonard grabbed her by the waist. "This is not a toy," he told her. "This is a gun. Do you know that guns kill people?" Amelia nodded seriously. "Go play," Volodya said. "Go on, Mia." He turned to Leonard then. To be precise, he is, as we know, the people who kill the people. But Amelia stood there. You would not know to look at Volodya's relaxed, handsome face that he and his wife had seen such things, that they had been over the world running for home. Leonard sat back. My God. He got up from the table, slowly making his way to the corner of the yard where the purse was spilled. Bending to a knee, he carefully began to place Vera's items back in her black leather purse. Lipstick, notebook, change purse, the ring of keys. He clicked the handbag shut. He held it out in front of him as he walked back to the table. He looked at the purse in his hands. It seemed otherworldly to him. He placed it on the set table. It looked like a person, now contained, zipped up, the sack of flesh taut and ready. Vera's closed handbag sat on the corner of the table. The water glasses were kissed by lipstick and trailed with fingerprints. They were all waiting on the main course. Where was it? "Where are they?" Leonard said. Vladimir shook his head. "Where are the wives? Where are the wives?" The three sat at the table, hands in their laps, waiting to be served. Thank you.
As we continue on, well, Yvette Lisa Ndlovu. Her debut short story collection, Drinking from Graveyard Wells, was selected for the 2021 UPK New Poetry and Prose Series, and her novel, Manuscript in Progress, was selected by George R.R. Martin for the World Builder Scholarship. She earned her BA at Cornell University in 2019, just a few years ago. I mean, this person is amazing. And her MFA at UMass in Amherst. Her work has been supported by fellowships from the Tin House Workshop, the Bread Loaf Writers Workshop, and the New York State Summer Writers Institute. She is the Newhouse Visiting Assistant Professor of Creative Writing at Wellesley College and has taught at UMass, Clarendon West, and Juniper Institute for Young Writers. She is the co-founder of Voodoo Knots Summer Fellowship for Black SFF Writers. Her work has been anthologized in the Year's Best African Speculative Fiction 2021 and the NAACP Award-nominated Africa Risen. Her work has appeared in numerous journals and anthologies. And what I remember about Yvette is that she was such a passionate student of creative writing, and when she left, I think she won first prize in every creative writing prize that we offered. And so we just knew something big was going to happen. Yvette, thank you. Please come.
Thank you, Elena, for that introduction. Elena was actually my advisor, so this feels like such a full circle moment to have you introduce me. I'll be reading from Drinking from Graveyard Wells. I actually started the short story collection here at Cornell during an independent study with Professor Mkoma Wangugi. And when I went off to grad school, I scrapped most of those stories, but kept one that I worked with him on called Swimming with Crocodiles. So Cornell and the English department has a special place in my heart. Today I'll be reading from a story called Home Became a Thing with Thorns. In this story, it's a surreal exploration about what it means to be an immigrant. Immigrants in the world of the story have to give up parts of themselves in order to naturalize as a citizen. And this world is kind of like a hybrid of the US and South Africa. Home became a thing with thorns. They take Jabu's eyes on a Tuesday morning. The snowflakes fall with an obscene tenderness outside. We're inside a sterile government building that looks like a cross between a DMV and a church. The building seems to be designed to keep any warmth out, lest the kwerekweres inside get comfortable. It is the kind of cold that takes hold of your bones and refuses to let go. My friend Jabu is a painter. With the stroke of a brush, he can put rainbows to shame. He likes to paint our homeland, the beautiful blue sky we left behind when home became a thing with thorns. The naturalization priest lays a hand over Jabu's eyes, and just like that, Jabu's beautiful brown eyes vanish as if they've never existed. The spot where his eyes used to be is as smooth as an arm. Jabu collapses to the ground and retches on all fours into a plastic bin. Jabu isn't the first to vomit during a naturalization ceremony, so the priests always have those little plastic bins stationed at every corner of the building. The naturalization priest's face sours, like it might if he spotted a fat rat scurrying into his kitchen. Jabu retches until there's nothing left to come out of him anymore. He dry heaves and wails for the rest of the ceremony. He can't even cry. They took his eyes. One never knows what the naturalization priests are going to take from a kwerekwere. The only thing that we do know is that they will take something that you love. I remember my conversation with Jabu before the naturalization ceremony. I won't be a kwerekwere anymore, he'd said, his eyes lighting up to the prospect of his dreams coming together like pieces of a puzzle to a distant life. When I'm a citizen, I will take shifts at the power plant during the day and then paint at night. I'll save up to open up my own gallery, you'll see. I can't wait to brag to everybody that I have a friend with a gallery, I said. I watch Jabu on the floor now. The wretched of the earth are not meant to make art. We're supposed to be too busy surviving. The corners of the priest's mouth twitch upwards in delight at the humiliation. Another kwerekwere shown his place. Even though I too want to slump to the ground, I move towards Jabu and help him up. Come on, Jabu, I say. Stop it. I know it's cruel, but I have to be the stronger one. I can't let Jabu end up like Asha. God forbid she ends up like Asha. You're a citizen now, I remind him, giving him a squeeze. Forget your eyes. They were a small price to pay. They took, he whimpers, still unable to fully comprehend what happened, my eyes. You can find other ways to make art, Jabu, I say, pulling his hair back so he can retch some more. Others have it worse. Please, I don't want you to end up like... Asha was our friend. While we all picked up the new language and tried to iron out our accents, like pressing the wrinkles out of clothing, Asha refused to learn the new tongue. It was her form of resistance. This place would take from us anyways, Asha said. Why not hold on to something? Then the naturalization priest took her language. No longer could she sing Stella Chiweshe and Leonard Dembo songs that reminded us of the old weddings from the homeland before everything was lost. She didn't eat for a month after she got her citizenship. We found her hanging from the ceiling on a Sunday night. It could be worse, I say again, trying to convince myself more than him. The naturalization priests don't only take body parts and voices, they can take away joy, names, love, beauty, songs, laughter, family recipes, music, and so much more. I shudder to think about it, but that is the price of citizenship. I take Jabu home to the 2-bedroom apartment we share with 4 other Kwere-Kweres, buy him a cane, and make inquiries into getting him a service dog. I will do everything in my power to ensure he lands on his feet. Our roommates know the weight of the taking. They've seen this countless of times before. They saw it with Asha. So they allowed Jabu to have one of the rooms by himself tonight. Jabu doesn't speak. When I sing Chirara Mwana Wangu, a lullaby my gogo used to sing to me whenever I was restless, he keens until I can't bear to hear it anymore. Perhaps if Asha were here, she'd have done a better job of soothing him with song. Before I bolt out of his room, he asks me, his voice a hoarse rasp of what it once was, "What do you think they'll take from you?" His question haunts me. My naturalization ceremony is in a week. If I don't go through with the naturalization, they will send me back to the homeland. I've worked so hard just to stay here for that to be my end. Whatever the priests take from me, I'll just have to live with it. I'll sacrifice anything to stay here. Protests rage in the city. People carry placards denouncing the naturalization priests. On TV, a local man with a sneer on his face shouts that if it's so bad here, then go back to where you're from. I ignore the arrogance of one who's never known what it means to have a graveyard for a home. It is the arrogance of a man with solid earth beneath his feet. But I know that the ground we stand on is quicksand pretending to be solid. During the week, I try to forget about what's coming. I work under the table as a burner at the power plant that powers the city, harrowing work that no one else wants. The power plant has 5 chimneys, like a coal plant, the chimneys smoky eyesores that tower over the city. On my first day at work, I discovered that it isn't coal that fuels the city. In the morning, a storage truck drops off a large container from the previous week's naturalization ceremonies. Each of the containers is labeled with a date. We unload the containers and burn whatever we find inside. My mind wanders during the burning as I toss limbs, recipes, tongues, songs, and marriage certificates into a giant furnace. The furnace burps and farts out smoke whenever I feed it something new. The furnace's heat is not comforting. When I burn, I think of butterflies. The monarch butterfly is native to this land. It cannot survive cold winters. I read somewhere that it can travel as far as 3,000 miles to escape its death. The butterfly has no borders in its ways, no papers to produce and no tolls to pay to stay where it is warmer. The butterfly's flight is a beautiful thing, nature itself. Why is the flight from my homeland, from the winter of my life, filled with shame? When I come across a container with the date of Jabu's naturalization, I am jolted out of my daydream. My hand shakes when I open the lid to find a pair of eyes sitting on a heap of other losses. Jabu's eyes. I reach for the eyes to burn them, but cannot shake off the unease, cannot ignore the churning in my stomach. What would Asha do? A voice inside me screams. Asha wouldn't burn her friend's eyes. Asha would throw a middle finger up and march out of the plant. But Asha is gone, a pragmatic voice in my head cautions me. Don't be stupid. I quickly glance at the other burners and security camera before slipping the eyes into my pocket. I immediately take my timed bathroom break. In the toilet, I stash the eyes in my bra. Women in the old homeland would keep their coin purses in their bras to avoid pickpockets. No one ever thinks to search inside a woman's bra. My heart hammers in my chest throughout the rest of my shift. And I'll stop there. Thank you.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Thank you, Yvette. Okay. Alexi Zentner is the author of 7 novels, Copperhead, which is on sale here, The Lobster Kings, and Touch, which was a Barnes & Noble Discover Great New Writers selection. Under the pseudonym of Ezekiel Boone, he is the author of the internationally best-selling The Hatching trilogy, which includes the books The Hatching, Skitter, and 0 Day, as well as The Mansion. The story Touch was featured in a O. Henry Prize collection in 2008, and Trapline was awarded the Narrative Prize and garnered the inclusion of being in the Best American Short Stories in 2008. His work has been published or is forthcoming in more than 16 countries and a dozen languages and is under development for the screen. He received his MFA at Cornell in 2009 and is currently Associate Professor of English and Creative Writing at Binghamton University. Please welcome Alexi.
Thank you, Roger and Elena. Thank you for having me back. To Lanre and Jennifer and Yvette, thank you for sharing this with me. It's been a pleasure to meet you. I just want to acknowledge this is my first time back since Michael Cook died, and it's a loss. If you didn't get a chance to work with him, he was a wonderful man. And for me, he was a huge part of this program. So it's a big loss. I was planning to read from Copperhead, and I don't want to. It's a novel about white supremacy and extremism and hate, and I don't want to read from that right now. So I'm going to read a short, and then an excerpt from a novel that I have forthcoming next fall, which is a thriller. Not exactly like the happiest, funny comedy stuff, but slightly less bleak than Copperhead, which is actually, I think, a hopeful book. I don't want to do that now. So this is called Orchard, and it's a pretty short piece. It's been a few years since I retired from teaching, but I'm still up at 5, taking my exercise before sunrise. There used to be 6 of us, but we're down to 4 women on our walks. 1 taken by the cancer, and 1 by a mean son of a bitch who killed himself before he could go to trial. And we see the emergency lights bleeding through the dark before we turn the corner by the library. I'm eating one of the apples that I picked from my orchard in the backyard, and I toss it into the bushes where it will serve as compost. There are police cars and a fire truck parked in front of the town square. They've got their floodlights turned over the fence and our war memorial. Every November, I'd march my first graders over, children neat in line, showing them the empty tomb and the names of each man our town had lost to war. There are 3 policemen standing by the cars, and up on the white marble, a firefighter in his bib and coat, hosing down the steps of the memorial. One of the policemen sees us and starts to walk over. "Careful," he says, pointing down at the ground. I look at my feet. There are flakes of rust on the sidewalk. "Morning, Miss Hazel," the policeman says. "We haven't had a chance to get all the blood cleaned up yet." It's a nasty business. It takes me a few seconds to come to his name. Than Chu. I don't think he notices the pause. I like to call my former students by name so they know that even though they've gone and grown up, they're still always mine. "I can't believe you're old enough to be in uniform, Than." "I just graduated, Miss Hazel. This is only my 2nd month." He was the first of my students to be Vietnamese, and God help me, but I thought he was nasty and brutish at first, a product of his people, foreign blood in a small town. But he was only lonely and scared, and just like every other 6-year-old boy I ever taught. All I can do is ask forgiveness for my backward thoughts and be thankful that I never spoke them aloud nor acted on them. I love Than as much as I loved every student I had, and it does me good to see him here. "Can you tell us what happened, Than?" "It's nothing good, Miss Hazel," he said. "Michael Conlon stabbed Paul Turkis last night. Killed him." "Oh, Than," I say, and I turn my head and tisk. Leslie, next to me, says, "I remember Paul, but not Michael. Was he one of your boys, Hazel?" Than leans over, puts his arm on my shoulder. "All the boys in town are Miss Hazel's. The 3 of us were in class together." I hear Melanie ask Than what it was over, and Than says, "A girl. It's always over a girl," but the words brush past me because I'm struggling not to cry. It's not because of Michael Conlon or Paul Tsirkis, but because I realize this isn't Than Chu. This is Than's son, Bin. The years just fall away from father to son, and Bin must think I don't remember him. But I do. I do remember him. And now I can remember him and Michael and Paul all sitting in the cafeteria together. Must have been 15 years ago, but I remember watching Michael take a bite of his red-skinned apple. I was close enough to see the way the juice dripped down his chin, and then Michael tossed the apple up into the rafters of the cafeteria. He slumped over when it didn't come down. He caught me staring at him and he said, I wanted to see what would happen, but now I can't eat my apple. Which doesn't explain why he stabbed Paul to circus last night. But it's not the boys that I'm thinking about anymore. It's the apple in flight and the way it reminds me of the apples I have in the small orchard in my backyard. I've spent the last few days picking them and putting them down in the cellar, but there's so many that I can't reach. Those are the ones that are going to fall from the tree and bruise on the ground, turning to dust and rust, sinking into the ground to feed the trees, always hoping that the branches will reach higher. I write literary fiction and I write thrillers and I've written some horror as well, and I'm kind of all over the place, which is a joy. One of the things I said to the grad students earlier is write what you want, right? The point of being an artist is to create the kind of art you want, and I'm very lucky that I've had the luxury of doing that. So I'm going to be reading just the first short chapter from a novel I have coming out next year, which is a pretty straight up thriller. So the first time I killed a man, I was 11 years old. My sister and I had been raised by a thief to be thieves ourselves. It was as if our dad won Wimbledon, and when we were born, he decided that he would mold us into the greatest tennis players of all time. Except instead of spending our childhood with rackets in our hands, it was lockpicks and Glocks. And it worked. By the time I was 11, I could crack safes, bypass alarms, plan a heist, shoot equally well with both hands, and hold my own in a fight against a grown man. Ginny, who was 15 months older, could do the same, but better. She liked to make the old joke about Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers, except that she mostly wore cool sneakers, and our choreographed dance routines revolved around taking expensive things from other people. The job we were on was a total milk run from start to finish. No guards, an outdated security system, and a safe that you could have opened by just breathing on it. It was really a one-person job, but part of Dad's training regime was to bring us along when he could. He had every reason to expect that it would be a clean heist. The fixer was an old friend who was in a bind, and even though Dad hadn't seen him in probably 2 decades, they'd been close once, and Dad thought he could trust him. He was wrong. We were in southern Portugal, near the border with Spain, which doesn't really matter, except that it was far from Los Angeles. Everything had been arranged from a distance, and it's possible that the friend didn't know that Ginny and I even existed, but we were supposed to meet him with a statue we'd stolen at this old seaside fort. A simple exchange. He gave Dad a flat-rate fee, Dad gave him the statue. It was small, neatly packed away in a foam-lined, hard-sided travel case. And the friend pocketed whatever the difference was between what he was paying Dad and what the person who had commissioned the job in the first place was offering. Ginny and Dad were waiting on a low stone wall. I was messing around on the rocks. I don't remember what I was doing. I was 11, so it was probably something dumb, but I was out of sight. When I scrambled back up, I saw a very pale man holding a pistol on Dad and Ginny. I knew that Dad had an automatic in a shoulder holster, but it was under his zippered jacket. Ginny was carrying a Sig Sauer holstered on the small of her back. Their hands were up and empty. Dad's old friend had clearly gotten the drop on them. Easy to do when you thought you could trust somebody. I was in the man's blind spot. I saw my dad's eyes flicker on me and then back to his old friend's face. The sun was out, but the wind came cold off the water. I was wearing a light jacket that didn't do much to keep me warm, even with the Kevlar vest underneath. But I had a little 5-shot snub-nosed revolver in my pocket. I took it out. I was at a 20-degree angle behind the man, enough so that I could shoot him in the back without worrying about hitting my sister or Dad. I raised the pistol slowly. When we weren't working, Dad had us practicing shooting 5 or 6 times a week, 200 rounds with each hand. I'd probably fired 250,000 rounds in training by then. I was a natural righty, but at 25 yards, I could shoot a 2-inch grouping with either my left or my right hand. Even though the revolver I was holding was made for close-up work, this would be like shooting fish in a barrel. Except it wasn't a fish, it was a man. And while I was standing there trying to get myself to shoot a man from behind, he fired first. 2 quick shots into my dad's chest. His gun flicked up. I recognized what was happening even before I processed it. Mozambique drill. 2 to the body, 1 to the head. I'd done it thousands of times in the range in close quarter firearms combat training. The Mozambique drill, or failure drill, depending on who's teaching it, was a natural response to body armor or to the fact that it was possible to shoot somebody in the body twice and still manage to miss anything vital. 2 quick shots to the chest to slow your opponent for a moment, center mass, the easiest target, and buy yourself the chance to aim properly for the much smaller and more difficult and final shot to the head. 1, 2, and then 3, done. And I saw the man shoot my dad, 1, 2, And in that short window of time before 3, I understood what was about to happen, that I had no choice if I wanted to stop him from killing my father. I shot the man in the back of the head before he got a 3rd shot off. He went down hard. I ran past him, trying not to look at the dark, wet cave in his skull. Ginny was already kneeling over my dad by the time I got there. He was gasping and clawing at his chest. Ginny pushed his hands aside and unzipped his jacket so she'd work the straps on his bulletproof vest. "You're good," she said, a note of relief in her voice. "The vest did its job. Neither bullet went through." "Ribs," he said, still trying to catch his breath. "I'm okay. Deal with your brother." Ginny looked at me. She shook her head. "Stop crying, Duke. It's done. That's fine. Get over it and grow up. We don't have time for you to be a baby." I wiped at my eyes and my nose with my sleeve. Ginny held out her hand and I gave her the revolver. She climbed down to the rocks, scrambled over to the water's edge, and threw the pistol as far as she could into the ocean. Dad, in obvious pain, slowly pushed himself up with one arm until he was in a sitting position. His other arm was clamped across his ribs. "Next time," he said to me, "don't hesitate." He knew I hadn't wanted to pull the trigger. And he knew there'd be a next time. Thank you.
At this time, please stand up here so we can give you your
I just say, who knew we'd have 2 kids holding guns in this reading?
okay, well, I think it's enough of it, yeah.
Yes.
Congratulations. Yeah. Okay, that's it?
Yeah, I'll do a formal one, but you can mingle for a minute if you want while I sip the later.
Okay, all right. Oh, you're gonna
We are having a reception upstairs, right? Reception upstairs. Books can be purchased here and will be signed upstairs, so please join us.